The struggling artist donates painting to charity, not realizing it's a lost Da Vinci masterpiece. This singular act of generosity would rewrite Marcus Reed's entire existence. But on this rain-soaked Tuesday morning, he knows nothing of fate's hidden design as he stares at the canvas, leaning against his apartment wall, the last remnant of his grandmother's modest estate. Marcus traces trembling fingers over the darkened oils of the old landscape, rolling Tuscan hills beneath a golden sky, rendered in strokes both familiar and strangely alien. His rent notice lies crumpled on the floor, final warning emblazoned in harsh red letters. 3 months behind, eviction imminent. The familiar tightness returns to his chest, the same constriction that's haunted him since the gallery rejection last month. "You lack originality, Mr. Reed," the curator had said, barely glancing at his portfolio. "Your technical skill is commendable, but where's your voice? Where's your soul?" The words echo in his cramped studio apartment, where canvases gather dust in corners and paintbrushes stiffen in murky jars. Once Marcus had believed. Once his grandmother had believed in him too, her weathered hands clasping his as she'd whispered, "Art isn't what you make, my dear boy. It's what you give away." Outside, rain pelts against the single window, distorting the gray Manhattan skyline. Marcus hasn't sold a painting in 8 months. The coffee shop where he works part-time has cut his hours. His phone buzzes, another creditor. He lets it ring into silence. The old landscape painting had hung in his grandmother's cottage for as long as he could remember. Family heirloom, she'd always said with a mysterious smile, passed down through generations. After her funeral 3 weeks ago, it was all he'd taken. This painting and her words about giving. Marcus wraps the canvas carefully in brown paper, securing it with the last strip of packing tape. The Community Hope Charity Auction is accepting donations until noon. They support arts programs for underprivileged children. Children like he once was, before his grandmother's love had given him permission to dream. Maybe this is what giving means. Maybe this is his voice. The subway ride downtown feels like a funeral procession. The package sits heavy on his lap, and twice he nearly turns back. But his grandmother's voice persists, a gentle haunting in his ear. The charity's collection point operates from a refurbished church basement. A woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair greets him at the desk. Her name tag reads Claire. "Last-minute donation?" she asks, her smile genuine. Marcus nods, unable to articulate the complex grief of surrendering his final connection to his grandmother. It's an old landscape, family piece. Might fetch something decent. Claire accepts the package with reverence that surprises him. Every donation matters. You'd be amazed how a single painting can change lives. He signs the paperwork with numb fingers. No return policy. No commission. Just a tax receipt and the hollow comfort of doing something his grandmother might have approved of. "Would you like to leave your contact information?" Claire asks. Sometimes donors enjoy hearing where their gifts end up. Marcus hesitates, then shakes his head. It's better this way. Better not to know. Better not to wonder if he's made another mistake. He steps back into the rain without an umbrella, letting the cold droplets mingle with the tears he can no longer contain. The doctor, Alessandra Vinci, doesn't belong in New York. After 15 years at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, the Metropolitan Museum feels like an ill-fitting coat. Prestigious, but uncomfortable. 3 months into her visiting curator position, she still startles at the city's constant noise, the aggressive pace that stands in stark contrast to the measured rhythms of her Tuscan hometown. The Community Hope auction preview starts in 20 minutes. Her assistant reminds her, poking his head into her office. "You promised to make an appearance." Alessandra sighs, closing the catalog she's been editing. The museum supports several local charities, and as the Renaissance specialist, she's expected to network and build community relationships. Another American custom that feels foreign, the performative philanthropy, the mingling with potential donors over mediocre wine and rehearsed smiles. "I'll be there shortly," she replies, her Italian accent still pronounced despite years of English. The church basement has been transformed with portable gallery lighting and temporary display walls. Alessandra drifts through clusters of well-dressed patrons, nodding politely, answering occasional questions about the museum's upcoming exhibitions. Her mind wanders to the research she'd rather be doing, the attribution puzzle involving a minor Botticelli student that's consumed her thoughts for weeks. "Dr. Peter Vincenti, there's something I'd like your opinion on." Claire, the auction organizer, gestures toward a small painting displayed in the corner. It was a last-minute donation. There's something about the brushwork that seems significant. Alessandra follows more out of politeness than interest. Charity auctions rarely feature anything beyond amateur landscapes and derivative still lifes. But she is above all a professional. The painting is small, perhaps 15 by 20 inches, darkened with age and secured in a modest wooden frame. Rolling hills, cypress trees, a distant villa beneath a golden sky. Ordinary subject matter for an Italian landscape. Yet the moment she stands before it, something shifts in Alessandra's perception. Her breath catches. The practiced politeness falls away. "May I?" she whispers, already reaching for the painting. Claire nods, confused by the sudden intensity in the curator's demeanor. Alessandra lifts the frame carefully, tilting it toward the gallery lights. The varnish has yellowed significantly, obscuring details. But beneath the discoloration, certain elements stand out with alarming clarity. The distinctive handling of light through the cypress branches, the particular way the hillside curves, the mathematical precision of the perspective. Her hands begin to tremble. "Who donated this?" she asks, her voice barely audible. Claire consults her clipboard. "A young man, Marcus Reed. He didn't leave contact information. Said it was a family heirloom." Alessandra's heart pounds against her ribs. She knows she should proceed with caution, that attributions require scientific analysis, provenance research, comparative studies. But 15 years of studying the Renaissance masters has honed her eye beyond scholarly caution. "This painting cannot be auctioned tonight," she says firmly. "I need to examine it properly at the museum. But the auction starts in an hour. The Metropolitan Museum will make a donation equivalent to whatever you might have raised." Alessandra interrupts, unable to tear her eyes from the canvas. "But this painting requires immediate conservation assessment." She doesn't share her suspicion. Not yet, not until she's certain. But as she carefully wraps the painting for transport, her fingers trace the edge of the frame, where, beneath centuries of grime, she glimpses what might be the faintest trace of an inscription. 3 days pass before Marcus forces himself to check his mailbox. Bills, advertisements, and a crisp white envelope bearing the Metropolitan Museum of Art's distinctive logo. He stares at it, uncomprehending. He hasn't visited the Met in over a year, certainly hasn't donated or become a member. Inside, a formal letter requests his presence regarding a matter of significant importance concerning your recent charitable donation. A business card is paperclipped to the corner. Dr. Alessandro Vinci, visiting curator of Renaissance art. Cold sweat breaks across his forehead. Have they discovered some problem with the painting? Is there some liability he hasn't considered? He can't afford legal troubles, not now. Not when he's down to his last $100, with no prospects and an eviction deadline looming in 4 days. The museum seems impossibly grand as Marcus climbs the stone steps the following morning, dressed in his only decent shirt, wrinkled from its long exile at the back of his closet. The massive columns make him feel smaller with each step, an imposter about to be exposed. A security guard directs him through a maze of administrative corridors until he reaches a door marked Conservation Laboratory, authorized personnel only. He knocks tentatively. The woman who opens the door isn't what he expected. Mid-40s perhaps, with intelligent eyes and an olive complexion. Her dark hair is gathered in a loose knot, and she wears not the business attire he anticipated, but a white lab coat over casual clothes. "Mr. Reed?" Her accent is distinctly Italian. "I'm Dr. Vinci. Thank you for coming." The laboratory beyond is a windowless space filled with specialized equipment, magnifying lenses on articulated arms, and specialized lighting systems. In the center, on an examination table, sits his grandmother's painting, removed from its frame and surrounded by scientific instruments. Panic rises in Marcus's throat. "Is there something wrong?" "I didn't misrepresent anything. It was just a family painting." "Doctor, Sir Wafreling Yerdino Martin, Sir Yenewamam." Vincenti raises a hand, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Reed, where did you acquire this painting?" "It was my grandmother's. She passed away recently." The words still hurt to say aloud. "She always said it was a family heirloom." "And your family history? Do you know your ancestry?" Marcus shifts uncomfortably. "American, mostly. My grandmother's maiden name was De Silvio. Her grandparents came from Italy in the 1890s. He pauses. "Why?" "What is this about?" "Doctor, Vincenti gestures to the painting. "We've conducted preliminary analysis over the past 72 hours. Carbon dating of the canvas and pigment analysis confirm the materials are consistent with late 15th century Italian methods. Infrared reflectography has revealed an underdrawing characteristic of a very particular hand. She steps closer to the painting, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. Mr. Reed, preliminary evidence suggests this painting may be attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, specifically from his early Florentine period around 1473. The room seems to tilt. Marcus grabs the edge of a nearby table to steady himself. That's not possible, he stammers. It's just an old landscape. My grandmother had it hanging in her living room. We used to eat Sunday dinners beneath it. Dr. Vincenti's expression softens. Art history is full of such stories. Masterpieces hanging unrecognized in ordinary homes for centuries. The authentication process is complex and will take months to complete with absolute certainty, but she pauses, choosing her words carefully. If confirmed, we're discussing a previously unknown Leonardo worth approximately $150 million. Marcus's legs give way. He finds himself seated, though he doesn't remember moving toward the chair. The figure is incomprehensible, abstract, like trying to count stars or measure the ocean. There must be some mistake, he whispers. Doctor, Vincenti shakes her head. The compositional elements match Leonardo's notebooks. The geological formations in the background demonstrate his understanding of Earth's structures. The specific brushwork technique, particularly in the foliage, bears his unmistakable signature style. She points to a magnified section displayed on a monitor. And here, revealed under ultraviolet light, traces of his left-handed brush direction. Marcus stares at the painting. This familiar stranger he'd surrendered so easily. This last piece of his grandmother he'd given away. What happens now? He asks, his voice hollow. That depends on you, Mr. Reed. Legally, the painting now belongs to the Community Hope charity, as your donation was finalized. However, she hesitates. There are complications. The complications unfold over the following weeks in a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and increasingly intrusive press attention. The charity, while legally entitled to the painting, recognizes the extraordinary circumstances. A settlement is negotiated. The painting will be acquired by the Metropolitan Museum through a special acquisition fund, with the majority of proceeds going to Community Hope and a significant finder's fee allocated to Marcus. But as April turns to May, Marcus finds himself increasingly haunted by the revelation. His apartment, now secure through an advance against the finder's fee, feels emptier than before. Each night, he dreams of his grandmother, her knowing smile as she dusted the painting every Sunday morning with peculiar reverence. Had she known? Had generations of his family carried this secret without understanding its significance? The press labels him the accidental millionaire and the reluctant heir. Reporters camp outside his building, shouting questions about how he'll spend his windfall. Art dealers and gallery owners who once rejected his work now call with enthusiastic offers to represent him. The sudden attention and impending wealth should feel like salvation. Instead, they curdle in his stomach like spoiled milk. In the conservation laboratory, he finds unexpected sanctuary. Dr. Vincenti, Alessandra, as she now insists he call her, allows him to observe the painstaking process of authentication. Her quiet expertise and lack of interest in his newfound celebrity status provide the only hours of peace in his increasingly chaotic life. Why landscapes? He asked one afternoon, watching her carefully mapping the painting's craquelure patterns. Da Vinci is known for portraits like the Mona Lisa. Why would he paint an ordinary Tuscan hillside? Alessandra smiles without looking up from her work. Leonardo saw no distinction between art and science. For him, landscapes weren't decorative backgrounds, but studies of how the world functions. She gestures to the distant hills in the painting. Look closely at how light falls across these slopes. He's not just representing what he saw. He's demonstrating principles of atmospheric perspective, documenting geological formations. This isn't merely a landscape, it's a scientific observation rendered through artistic genius. Marcus leans closer, seeing the painting through new eyes. I used to stare at it for hours as a child. Something about those hills always felt alive somehow. The most profound art speaks to us before we understand why. Alessandra replies, her voice softening. This painting found its way to you for a reason, I think. The observation lingers with Marcus long after he leaves the museum. That night, alone in his apartment, he unwraps his long-neglected canvases and sets up his easel by the window. For the first time in months, his hands don't tremble as he mixes paint. When Claire from Community Hope calls 2 weeks later, Marcus expects another discussion about the settlement agreement. Instead, she asks a different question entirely. We're launching a new arts education program. with some of the proceeds from the painting. She explains, "We need someone to teach basic painting techniques to children in underserved communities. Given your connection to the whole situation, we thought perhaps." Marcus finds himself saying yes before she finishes the proposal. The classroom is in a repurposed storefront in the Bronx, filled with mismatched furniture and donated art supplies. 12 children, ages 8 to 13, regard him with varying degrees of skepticism on the first day. "Are you really the guy from the news? The one who gave away all that money?" asks a girl with braided hair and serious eyes. "I didn't give away money," Marcus explains, arranging watercolor sets on the tables. "I gave away a painting that turned out to be valuable. There's a difference." "Weren't you mad, though?" persists a lanky boy near the window. "My mom said you must be the dumbest man in New York." The comment stings, but less than it might have weeks ago. "Maybe," Marcus acknowledges with a small smile. "Or maybe there are more important things than money." He doesn't know where the words come from, but as soon as they're spoken, he recognizes their truth. Something has shifted within him since that rainy day in the church basement. Something his grandmother might have understood. As the weeks pass, the classroom becomes a sanctuary. Here, no one cares about the settlement negotiations or authentication controversies. Here, there are only colors and shapes, light and shadow, the universal language his grandmother had taught him before he could form sentences. Alessandra visits one afternoon, observing from the back of the room as Marcus demonstrates how to create depth with overlapping forms. The children are initially intimidated by her formal demeanor and accented English, but she wins them over by sketching quick, remarkably accurate portraits of each student. "You never mentioned you were an artist too," Marcus says afterward as they walk through the neighborhood. "Conservation science has been my focus for so long, I sometimes forget the joy of creation," she admits. "Watching you with those children, it reminded me why I fell in love with art in the first place." They stop at a small cafe, conversations flowing easily between topics. The authentication process, her childhood in Florence, his grandmother's subtle influence on his artistic development. As evening approaches, Alessandra hesitates before asking the question that's clearly been on her mind. "The settlement will be finalized next month. Have you decided what you'll do after?" Marcus has thought of little else, though he's shared his plans with no one. "I'm establishing a foundation," he says quietly. "Most of the money will go toward arts education programs like the one at Community Hope. The rest will fund a scholarship for conservation studies." Alessandra's surprise is evident. That's remarkably generous. Many would see this as their opportunity for financial security. "I keep thinking about what my grandmother always said about art, that it isn't what you make, it's what you give away." He traces patterns in the condensation on his water glass. "For 500 years, that painting traveled through countless hands to reach mine. I didn't earn it. I was just its temporary caretaker." Something shifts in Alessandra's expression. A softening, a recognition. "There's another aspect of the authentication I haven't shared yet," she says. "We found something during the infrared examination. An inscription, nearly invisible beneath centuries of varnish and dirt." Marcus leans forward. "What did it say?" "Per ricordare che la bellezza appartiene a tutti." She translates softly, "To remember that beauty belongs to everyone." The words settle over them like a blessing, a message across centuries that seems meant precisely for this moment, this conversation. "Leonardo understood," Marcus whispers. "It was never about possession." The official unveiling of Tuscan hillside with cypress trees occurs on a brilliant October morning, 6 months after Marcus first walked into the charity auction with a wrapped canvas under his arm. The Metropolitan Museum's special exhibition gallery overflows with press, art historians, and curious visitors drawn by the sensational story of the lost Leonardo. Marcus stands slightly apart from the crowd, watching as Alessandra delivers a scholarly presentation on the authentication process. She's elegant in her element, translating complex technical analysis into language the public can appreciate, her passion for the work evident in every gesture. His grandmother would have loved her, he thinks. The settlement has been finalized. The Community Hope charity has received $80 million, transforming their capacity to serve underprivileged communities. Marcus's foundation is established with $20 million, dedicated to arts education and conservation studies. His personal portion, $5 million, remains largely untouched in an account he still can't quite believe bears his name. After the formal presentation, museum visitors line up to view the painting, now carefully illuminated in a custom-designed case. Marcus observes their reactions. The wonder, the curiosity, the occasional tears from those moved by either the artwork itself or the story of its discovery. A small hand slips into his. He looks down to find Lucia, the serious-eyed girl from his art class, gazing up at him. "My whole class is here," she explains, pointing to a group of children clustered around a museum educator. "Miss, Claire brought us on a special trip." "What do you think of the painting?" Marcus asks, crouching to her level. Lucia studies the Leonardo with the unfiltered honesty of childhood. "It's smaller than I thought it would be," she decides. "But it feels like you could walk right into those hills." She turns to him, her expression suddenly earnest. "Do you miss it? Having it in your house?" The question catches him off guard. "Sometimes," he admits, "but now everyone can see it, not just me." "That seems right somehow. Like how you taught us that art is for sharing?" Lucia nods, satisfied with her own understanding. "That's why you're painting again, isn't it? To share what you see?" Before Marcus can answer, Alessandra approaches, smiling at Lucia. "Your teacher says you're quite the artist yourself." She tells the girl, "Perhaps we'll display your work here someday." Lucia's eyes widen. "For real? Art has a way of surprising us," Alessandra says, her gaze lifting to meet Marcus's. "The most valuable things often come from unexpected places." Later, as the crowd thins and afternoon light slants through the museum's massive windows, Marcus finds himself alone with Alessandra before the painting that has transformed both their lives. They stand in comfortable silence, studying the landscape that has survived 5 centuries to bring them to this moment. "I received an offer to extend my position here permanently," Alessandra says finally. "The museum wants me to head a new conservation initiative. Are you going to accept?" Marcus asks, aware of how much her answer matters to him. "New York is beginning to feel less foreign," she admits. "There are certain attachments I've formed that make the idea of staying appealing." Her hand finds his, fingers intertwining with gentle certainty. "My grandmother used to say that art isn't just what hangs on walls," Marcus tells her, his voice soft in the quiet gallery. "It's the way we choose to see the world, the beauty we decide to preserve." Alessandra's smile holds the warmth of Tuscan sunlight. "Your grandmother was a very wise woman." Beyond them, Leonardo's landscape glows with 5 centuries of accumulated light. Hills rolling endlessly toward a golden horizon, a testament to beauty passed from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation. Not a possession, but a trust. A reminder that the most precious gifts are those we give away. Together, they step into the museum's great hall, where afternoon sun streams through soaring windows, illuminating possibilities neither could have imagined on that rain-soaked morning when a struggling artist donated a painting to charity, not realizing it was a lost Da Vinci masterpiece, or that in giving away his past, he was actually reaching toward his future.